Imagine a world where a single drop of blood could tell you everything about your health. No more vials, no more needles. Just a tiny prick of your finger, and within hours you'd have access to hundreds of medical tests. Sounds like science fiction, right? Well, that's exactly what one company promised to deliver. And for a while, the world believed them. This is the story of Theranos, a company that was once valued at $9 billion, graced the covers of major magazines, and was hailed as the next revolution in healthcare. Its founder was compared to Steve Jobs, called the youngest self-made female billionaire in America, and praised as a visionary who would change medicine forever. But behind the glossy magazine covers and the black turtlenecks, there was nothing but lies. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most spectacular fraud scandals in Silicon Valley history, a story of ambition, deception, and the dangerous consequences of believing in someone too much. This is the rise and fall of Theranos. Let's get started. Our story begins with Elizabeth Holmes. Born in 1984 in Washington, D.C., Elizabeth grew up in a well-connected family. Her father worked for government agencies, and her mother was a congressional committee staffer. From an early age, Elizabeth was ambitious, driven by a desire to do something extraordinary. She was the kind of student who didn't just want good grades, she wanted to change the world. In 2002, at just 18 years old, Elizabeth enrolled at Stanford University to study chemical engineering. She was bright, determined, and already thinking about her future startup. During her freshman year, she spent time in a research lab, learning about medical testing and drug delivery systems, and that's when the idea struck her. Elizabeth became obsessed with the inefficiency of traditional blood testing. Why did doctors need to draw large vials of blood? Why did tests take days to come back? Why was healthcare so slow, so expensive, and so inaccessible to millions of people? She envisioned a revolutionary device. A small machine that could run hundreds of tests on just a few drops of blood. Fast, accurate, affordable. It would democratize healthcare, bringing life-saving diagnostics to people everywhere. In 2003, at just 19 years old, Elizabeth dropped out of Stanford. She used the money her parents had saved for her tuition to start a company. She called it Real-Time Cures, but soon changed the name to something catchier, Theranos, a combination of therapy and diagnosis. She was young, charismatic, and full of confidence. And she had a story that investors desperately wanted to believe. In the early years, Theranos operated in stealth mode. Elizabeth was secretive about the technology, claiming it was too valuable to share publicly. She cultivated an air of mystery, which only made investors more curious. And Elizabeth was incredibly good at selling the dream. She adopted Steve Jobs' signature look. Black turtlenecks, minimal makeup, intense eye contact. She deepened her voice to sound more authoritative. She spoke in grand visions. This isn't just a company. This is a mission to save lives. And people bought it. By 2010, Theranos had raised over $90 million from some of the most powerful people in America. We're talking about Henry Kissinger, George Shultz, Rupert Murdoch, and the Walton family. These weren't just wealthy investors, they were titans of industry and politics. But here's the thing, none of them were scientists. None of them asked to see hard data. They invested based on belief, not evidence. By 2013, Theranos started partnering with major pharmacy chains. They opened wellness centers inside Walgreens stores where customers could get blood tests using Theranos devices. The company claimed their technology, a machine called the Edison, could run over 200 tests from a single drop of blood. The media went wild. Elizabeth appeared on the cover of Fortune, Forbes, and Inquirer magazine. She was interviewed on CNBC, spoke at TED, and was invited to prestigious conferences. In 2014, at just 30 years old, she was named the youngest self-made female billionaire in the world, with a net worth of $4.5 billion. She wasn't just a CEO, she was a celebrity, an icon, a symbol of female empowerment in a male-dominated industry. But behind closed doors, something was very, very wrong. While the world celebrated Elizabeth Holmes, the employees inside Theranos were living a nightmare. The company was divided into silos. Teams didn't communicate with each other. Security was extreme. Employees needed key cards to access different parts of the building, and many had no idea what their colleagues were working on. And most importantly, the technology didn't work. The Edison device, the machine that was supposed to revolutionize blood testing, was unreliable. It gave inconsistent results. It couldn't run most of the tests it claimed to run. So Theranos did something shocking. They started running tests on traditional machines made by other companies, then pretending the results came from their own device. Employees who raised concerns were silenced. Some were threatened with lawsuits. Others were fired. Elizabeth and her business partner, Ramesh "Sonny" Balwani, created a culture of fear and intimidation. One whistleblower, Tyler Schultz, grandson of board member George Schultz, tried to alert his grandfather about the problems. But George didn't believe him. He sided with Elizabeth instead. Tyler was ostracized from his own family, but Tyler didn't give up. He reached out to a journalist named John Carreyrou at the Wall Street Journal, and that's when everything started to unravel. In October 2015, Carreyrou published an explosive investigation. The article revealed that Theranos was using traditional blood testing machines for most of its tests, not the revolutionary Edison device. It exposed the faulty results, the culture of secrecy, and the intimidation tactics. The world was stunned. Elizabeth went on a media tour denying everything. She appeared on Mad Money with Jim Cramer, on CBS This Morning, and in carefully scripted interviews, insisting the technology worked and the story was false. But the damage was done. Regulators started investigating, partners like Walgreens began pulling back, and former employees started speaking out. The myth of Theranos was crumbling. In 2016, everything fell apart. Federal regulators found serious deficiencies in Theranos' lab operations. They discovered that the company's tests were so inaccurate that they could endanger patients. Imagine getting a false positive for cancer or a false negative for a life-threatening infection. People's lives were at stake. Theranos was banned from operating its labs. Walgreens terminated its partnership and sued the company. Investors started demanding their money back. By 2017, Theranos was on life support. The board was dissolving, employees were leaving, and Elizabeth Holmes was facing mounting legal pressure. In March 2018, the Securities and Exchange Commission charged Elizabeth Holmes and Sonny Balwani with massive fraud. They had lied to investors, lied to partners, and lied to the public. The company that was once worth $9 billion was now worthless. Elizabeth agreed to a settlement. She gave up control of Theranos, paid a $500,000 fine, and was banned from serving as an officer or director of a public company for 10 years. But that wasn't the end. In June 2018, Elizabeth Holmes was indicted on federal charges of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. If convicted, she faced up to 20 years in prison. Theranos officially dissolved in September 2018. The company that promised to revolutionize healthcare had become one of the biggest frauds in Silicon Valley history. For years, Elizabeth Holmes remained defiant. She maintained her innocence, claiming she genuinely believed in the technology and never intended to deceive anyone. Her trial finally began in September 2021. It lasted for months and captivated the nation. The prosecution presented emails, text messages, and testimony from former employees and investors. They painted a picture of deliberate deception and manipulation. Elizabeth's defense argued that she was a young entrepreneur who made mistakes, but wasn't a criminal. They claimed Sonny Balwani had controlled and abused her, influencing her decisions. In January 2022, the jury reached a verdict. Elizabeth Holmes was found guilty on 4 counts of fraud. She was acquitted on other charges, but the guilty verdicts were damning. In November 2022, she was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. Sonny Balwani was tried separately and found guilty on all 12 counts of fraud. He was sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison. Both are currently serving their sentences, but the consequences of Theranos go beyond 2 people going to jail. Patients who received faulty test results dealt with anxiety, unnecessary treatments, and in some cases, misdiagnoses that affected their health. Investors lost hundreds of millions of dollars, and the entire healthcare startup ecosystem was shaken. Venture capitalists became more cautious. Regulators started scrutinizing health tech companies more carefully, and the public learned a painful lesson. Charisma and confidence are not substitutes for evidence and integrity. So, what can we learn from the Theranos scandal? Lesson 1. Hype is not the same as substance. Elizabeth Holmes was a master storyteller. She knew how to inspire people, how to paint a compelling vision. But a great story doesn't make a product real. In the startup world, it's easy to get caught up in the excitement and forget to ask the hard questions. Does this actually work? Where's the proof? Lesson 2. Secrecy is a red flag. Theranos operated in extreme secrecy, claiming it was necessary to protect intellectual property. But real innovation doesn't hide from scrutiny. It welcomes it. Peer review, transparency, and independent validation are essential, especially in healthcare where lives are on the line. Lesson 3. Culture matters. Inside Theranos, fear and intimidation replaced collaboration and honesty. Employees were afraid to speak up. Whistleblowers were punished. This toxic culture didn't just hurt morale, it allowed fraud to flourish. A healthy company culture encourages questions, values integrity, and protects those who tell the truth. Lesson 4. Investors need to do their homework. Many of Theranos' investors were brilliant, successful people, but they weren't experts in medical technology. They invested based on trust and charisma, not data. This is a reminder that due diligence isn't optional. It doesn't matter how impressive the founder is. If you can't verify the claims, you shouldn't invest. Lesson 5. The consequences of fraud are real. This wasn't just a financial scandal. Real patients received inaccurate medical tests. Some may have made life-altering decisions based on faulty information. Fraud in healthcare isn't just unethical, it's dangerous. Elizabeth Holmes wanted to change the world, and in a way she did, just not in the way she imagined. Her story is now a cautionary tale, taught in business schools and ethics classes around the world. The Theranos scandal is more than just a story about one company or one person. It's a story about ambition without ethics, vision without execution, and the danger of believing in someone too much. Elizabeth Holmes had a dream that many people shared, making healthcare more accessible, affordable, and efficient. That dream wasn't wrong, but the way she pursued it, through deception, manipulation, and fraud, was inexcusable. The saddest part? If she had been honest about the challenges, if she had admitted when the technology wasn't ready, if she had built slowly and transparently, she might have actually achieved something remarkable. Instead, she became a symbol of Silicon Valley's darkest tendencies. Fake it till you make it taken to a criminal extreme. But here's the silver lining. We're learning. Regulators are more vigilant. Investors are more skeptical. And entrepreneurs are being reminded that integrity isn't optional, it's everything. The story of Theranos is over, but the lessons it teaches us will echo for generations. So, what do you think? Could this have been prevented? Should investors have asked tougher questions? And what startups today might be walking the same dangerous path? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story fascinating, hit that subscribe button. We're covering more incredible startup stories, both triumphs and disasters every week. And if you want to see another legendary startup failure, let me know which one you'd like us to cover next. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and remember, in business, trust is earned with evidence, not just words. See you in the next one.